not need a coding background. And this is a motion graphics tool that I built from scratch. You can change the rotation of your objects. You can play with the line spacing and the time offset. And every one of these things are controls that I decided to add to my vibe coded app. This is using a technique that's called Software 3.0. It's when you use your natural language, any language that you like, your voice, English, whatever language you speak, and you use it to create programmable neural networks. And that's the vibe. That's what we're doing. So welcome to the stream, and let's get right to it. We're going to be creating apps from scratch, and this is one that I actually needed to build for my team of motion designers at the studio. I have this tool so you can turn off the ribbon. If you don't want to see this ribbon on here, you can go into the zoom and zoom it in and zoom it out. I also made these presets if you didn't want to build one of these from scratch that kind of runs a set of different noise distributions on it. Another fun thing about all this is you can go to any of them. Let's say this one here, Neon Galaxy, and you can go and play with the different parameters. So let's say you don't like that color, you can choose a different color. You can play with the turbulence and the line width and the offset of different values and the phase of the cycle that it's in and the amplitude and the frequency. And you can play with like the different types of waves that you want. And so this is kind of like a really cool workflow that I want to show you, and it should be a total blast. So welcome to the stream. We've been trying to test out the live stream a couple of times. It was breaking, but let me know with a visual emoji if it's working or not. Actually, wait, what do you say? I could probably test if it's working on my phone here. Yeah, it says I'm live. It just says loading. Do you just see a loading screen on your end? I don't know what that is. And this is one that I actually needed to build. Oh, no, it's working. Okay, great. I see Scotty Bikes. Okay, cool. Do you just see a loading screen on your end? I'm just going to keep my phone up here, almost like a preview, because for some reason I can't tell when it breaks, but let's just go right to it. Cold Watch says it's working. Okay, great. All right, so this tool is, fun. Let me see, can I zoom in? Is that too zoomed in? Okay, cool. All right, so let's build something like this. So first off, you have to know at a high level what you're trying to make, and if you're too vague, that might be a problem. So sometimes what I'll do first is kind of ask a large language model. I'll kind of, brain blast my idea to it and then ask it to kind of say it back to me just so I hear what my own idea is. That's one option. So let's go ahead and try that. So I'm gonna go to Claude. Oh yeah, and I just started to build a new version of this where you can like rotate it with clicking and dragging the mouse. You can play with the amplitude and the frequency and the type of wave and the wave thickness and the color and add gradients. So we just did this in the last like 17 minutes. So we're gonna do it again. Let's go ahead and start from scratch with a brand new chat. Good morning. All right, welcome. So here's what we're gonna do. Oh, you said zoom out? Oh, you want me to zoom out? Okay, let me zoom out. Is that better? Okay. So I would like to create a wave visualizer motion graphics tool that allows the user to use sliders and checks and buttons and knobs to control the appearance of a 3D sine wave. And with a slider, they can gradually change that sine wave into a sawtooth, into a square wave. We also want the ability to control the thickness of the line, and this needs to be coded in Three.js, that format. And we also need the ability to show and hide the menu that has all those controls so that the viewer or the user can just have a interface that's just the waves that they're making, or they can reveal that menu and gives them all of those granular controls where they can play with sliders. We want to also be able to control things like the frequency and the amplitude. And we also want the ability to control the number of waves that appear. We also want another slider to control the offset of time so that we can create more like a cascading appearance. And finally, we need to be able to switch the type of lines with it being a solid line if we want, or maybe a dashed line with a slider to control the number of dashes or dots. Finally, for this vibe coded app, we want the ability to click and drag around the 3D viewport to rotate around the object. And we need to be in a 3D scene with a gray and black-ish grid work plane so that the user knows where they are spatially. All right, so that's the kind of prompt that I would give a large language model like this. Oh, I don't know if it caught any of that. I think I hit the wrong button. Ah, bummer. Testing audio, does it work? Okay, we might have to redo that. I think I just might need to close my Super Whisper app and relaunch it real quick. So it might be due for an update. So let's do force quit. Super Whisper is the tool that I use to speak to my model, but maybe once a month I need to restart it when I get an update, and I forgot to restart it this morning, so sometimes it could be a tiny bit buggy. Okay, it should be launching. It should be testing. Can you hear my voice now? And can you hear this and turn it into text really fast? Okay, cool. It's working now. Let's try this again. I would like to create a tool for motion designers on a web interface, Three.js, where they can create the appearance of a 3D sine wave. They want sliders to control the thickness. They want tools to control the color or the gradient that's applied. They want the ability to try to create many waves that are kind of in alignment with each other. They want the ability to click and drag around the 3D viewer to rotate around the object. And we want a toggle that can create a ribbon-like effect that crosses all of the sine waves, or the ability to turn that off and just focus on the narrow sine waves. Finally, this menu with all these controls needs to be able to be shown and hidden by the user with a simple click so that they can focus on their kind of whole viewport being the web browser app. And then other times they can, expand the menu to get all of these sliders, knobs, and buttons and controls. Let's start with that. There we go. That's the kind of prompt I like to have. Now we go, you said, we got a question from, wish I could see your chat right in the chat here. What did you say? You said, can you make the wave coming from the image and wave have color properties of the image? You could, except I don't know how to import. See, the one thing I've noticed is if you are vibe coding, you also have to know about file management. And I don't know how to build a file manager that will allow me to upload an image. How about after this version, if I have a working version of the app, I'll ask if I can have an image uploader to kind of pick from. But let me run this first, because I kind of like to build in parts. Almost like doing little sprints when you're developing. You want to work in these little parts so that if you don't go too far or go ahead of yourself. All right, so now it looks like it is coding in HTML format. My goal is to make this a web app so that when I'm done, you see at the top corner there's a publish button. You're literally able to publish what you made and send it to anybody, like as a link. And my goal would be, hopefully after this, I can just send you this link and you'll have a tool, an app that I built. It will be hosted on Anthropic's servers. So they've kind of eliminated the need in some cases to have to build an app to preview the thing that you vibe coded. Now you can vibe code, with your voice, your natural language, and then deploy that app right there. And if you have a distribution platform like social media, you can share that with people. And I think that's pretty remarkable. And I'm just kind of talking over while it's doing all this code. What's fun is this tool writes code at the speed that like the hackers hack in movies. Have you remember like any movies where they show like a hacker going through and they're typing all these command lines and prompts, and then they get into the computer system, and it's usually depicted as like, like they're like hacking the mainframe and they're getting in there through all the code that they know. Up until now, that speed of hacking wasn't exactly possible, but now with AI tools and software 3.0 like this thing is writing the code to an app. We're essentially creating a programmable neural network. All right, looks like it works. Whoa, look at that. And it can toggle around it. I'm clicking and dragging the screen. I wish I could pan the view up. It won't let me pan upwards. It's kind of stuck near the bottom of the screen. I see a menu. Let's go ahead and click the menu. Awesome. So this menu button, when clicked, allows me to show and hide the interface like I wanted. And so let's go ahead and show it. Let's create the number of waves. Great. You can increase the number of waves. You can play with the thickness. Excellent. The amplitude, great. The frequency, amazing. The wave spacing, oh, beautiful. And then let's try use gradient. It looks like gradient tool is broken, but we'll go ahead and I'll try to fix that later. Let's go back to no gradient. We have an enable ribbon. I don't see the ribbon doing anything. We'll have to fix that. And then there's an animation speed. So let's increase the animation speed, play with the amplitude, play with the thickness, and I'm just going to rotate around here. All right, not bad. I actually really like this. Cool. Let's make some adjustments. So let me see your notes. Hey Don, good morning. Good morning, Buna. Good to see you. And it's only going to get faster. Exactly, way faster. Super Whisper Claude 4 to create 3JS. You nailed it, Scotty Bikes. That is exactly the vibe. Can I pin that? Can I pin what you just said? Because that's what we just did. It says Scott. Oh, it won't let me pin what you said. But yeah, that's the workflow so far. Okay. Now I got some new ideas. Some stuff's broken. I want to fix some things. I go back to the chat field over here and I go for my next vibe coded instruction. So I'm going to enable Super Whisper, describe what I want to see change, and we'll go from there. This is looking great so far. We want to make a couple of changes. First, whenever we rotate around this object, we want it to snap in 15-degree increments in whatever axis we're in. Also, we need the ability to raise these center point to anywhere. So maybe add a control for the y-axis so that we're able to move the array up and down. I also want the ability to affect the translucency of these. So we want to be able to see through them to see the others. We also want a couple of toggles that will control the perspective. So we want an isometric view, a perspective view, a top view, a side view, a right view, and a nice interface for the user to toggle between those. Furthermore, with the vibe coded app, we want to make sure that you can choose different types of waves. So maybe a slider that, that snaps into new spots, and each of those new spots is like square wave or, sawtooth wave or heartbeat. We also want to create a pulse that can go through the waves, and we want to control that pulse separately, as well as get some functions for that. We also need to see a grid on the work plane. It's kind of hard to see where we are in 3D space, so make sure we're adding a ground work plane for the 3D environment. So go from there. And, oh, it wasn't hearing me. Oh, there it goes. Okay, so then let's go ahead and run the version. We got a question from Buna on Instagram. Says, I saw interesting experience where you can synchronize a 3D scene across multiple windows using 3JS and local storage. That's pretty awesome. Scotty Bike says, please. Ronan says, and it's only going to go faster. Cold Watch says, can you make the wave and color it with a picture? I mean, can we use color with an image? Can you make the wave coming from the image have color? So I should share this now with you all. There's another way. Oh, I didn't hit the button. There's another way to vibe code. So right now I'm using voice, right? And I'm turning that into text. And I'm using that text to create a programmable neural network, right? There's another option. You can actually upload an image as like a guideline. So if there's a world where you draw a sketch of the interface that you want and you label it properly, you can take a photo of your sketch and then ask this vibe coded app to program that. So if you have a vision in mind, you can actually just sketch it out. And it doesn't even need to be like a phenomenal sketch. It can literally be like a crappy sketch, whatever you like. It's pretty remarkable that any of this is even possible. And I'm just excited that we're in this timeline together now where we can do this. Okay, here we go. Just waiting for that to load. So it's just vibe coding away, doing its thing. Still waiting for it to do its thing. Wow, it's doing a lot of code. So in the meantime, I'm going to go back to my old app and just kind of play with that while I wait. So I'm going to go to the perspective and the rotation slider. This will give me more ideas of things I might want to vibe code next. And also added these presets sections so you can kind of get different pulses. So I'm gonna go to a front view. Let's turn on no depth, no ribbon. Let's reduce the number of layers and play with that line spacing, time offset. So you can see that you can get just plain sine waves in a flat angle if you need them. Um, and that's all cool. And then when you need to, you can then rotate them in a third dimension, add more lines, connect them with ribbons, and add a depth effect. It creates this really nice shade. You can play with that perspective. I mean, it's just so cool that these are things that you can just build from describing them and having your AI vibe code them into existence. All right, let's see how we are doing with the app. Oh, wow, it's still writing code. So I was just trying to stall for time here. But let's go back and just keep playing. Oh, wow, the time offset's really interesting here. Whoa, that's a trippy look. Let's go to the rotation on the x-axis. What's so cool is like visualizing a sine wave in another dimension is really helpful because like seen from the top view, it looks like they're perfectly flat lines, but seen from just a slightly different angle, you create a very, very different effect.